XDefiant is so close now. It is launching tomorrow or at the very latest 48 hours from now, depending on where you live. And I am beyond excited to finally get my hands on the game. Now, with any new shooter though, there is always that little bit of a scramble right at the beginning to sort of learn the ins and outs quickly in order to be better than the rest of the competition. And so today I wanted to go over some of the best tips you guys should know before launch so you can hit the ground running on launch day. Now, the first two that I've got here are actually to do with settings that you guys should be changing as soon as you load up the game. And the first one is to do with your field of view. Now, this is often a little bit of a not so much controversial topic, but it is something that people either love or hate, because as good as the benefits of turning up your field of view are, it does make the game look a little bit weird if you haven't done that before. But trust me guys, it is absolutely worth turning your field of view up pretty much as high as you possibly can. I think the highest in this game is 120. And honestly, it is one of the first things I do in pretty much any shooter that I can play, especially these days when it is an actual setting that you can change, because 5 to 10 years ago in shooters, you couldn't really do this, not on console anyway. Now, the reason you want to turn your field of view up is essentially it just allows you to fit more on your screen. It does, like I said, make the screen look a little bit odd because it kind of turns it into like a fisheye lens where the edges of the screen are a little bit like curved and warped, and it does look a little bit odd at times, but you objectively can see more on your screen. And the more you can see and the more information you can take in, the better that is going to be for you in pretty much every single situation. So turn that field of view up, probably turn it to 120 if you can, but if it looks a little bit too weird, even turning it down to like 110 is still definitely worth it. Like I said, the more you can see, the more awareness you're going to have, and that will definitely help you in a fast-paced shooter like XDefiant. Now, the next setting that is worth changing is to do with the button layout. Now, in this game, it is called the brawler button layout. If you've played Call of Duty and you have changed this before, it is essentially what is called tactical in Call of Duty, and sort of every game has their own version of this. But this setting essentially just changes your right stick and the B or circle button and essentially flips them. So what that does is it puts all of your movement into the right stick, so you no longer need to press B or circle to crouch or slide. Instead, you just press the right stick, which obviously is already in control of your aim, and that means that all movement and aiming included in that is in both of your sticks. So obviously you move with the left stick, you aim with the right stick. Pressing L3 makes you sprint, and now pressing R3 will make you crouch or slide or even go prone in other games. Obviously this game doesn't have prone, so that isn't really an issue, but like I said, that will just keep all of your movement tied to those sticks. It means that you can slide while aiming, for example. It helps you a hell of a lot when it comes to getting into cover. If you're running along and someone starts shooting at you out of nowhere and there's a piece of cover in front of you, instead of having to take your finger off the stick that you use to aim, you can literally just press that. You'll still be able to aim while also entering the slide or the crouch. So it might feel weird. Trust me, stick with it for a week and I promise you, you will literally never ever go back. I say this at the start of every new game that comes out. When it comes to a first-person shooter, you always want to change the setting, and honestly, once you do, you will never ever go back to the default setting. Now, the next tip is to do with the practice range or the firing range, and I think this is going to be so underutilized in this game. It is probably one of the best practice ranges that I've seen in really any shooter that I've ever played, and you guys should absolutely be making the most of it. Now, I unfortunately don't have any gameplay of this, but I have seen videos from Espresso, so shout out to Espresso. This is his gameplay, as you can see. But what I do know from the practice range in all of the betas that I've played is that there is so many different things you can do in here. It isn't just as simple as being able to shoot your gun at targets. There are stationary targets. There are also moving targets that you can kind of choose the speed that they're running to help you get used to aiming at moving targets as well. It even has a spray pattern target that lets you kind of see the recoil pattern for your weapon, and will reset after a few seconds, so you can get the hang of how your recoil is going to happen for each weapon. There's even a course that kind of tests your movement and aim at the same time as well. So do not sleep on the practice range. I think this is going to be really good to kind of just jump in here for like 10 minutes before each session and sort of warm up a bit. I think it is going to be so underutilized, and that is something I definitely wanted to shout out because you guys should be making the most of that practice range. Now, another quick little tip is to do with when you're building your loadouts, specifically when you're choosing your attachments. When you choose each attachment, as you can see down there, if you press triangle or Y, it'll bring up the detailed statistics. And as you can see here, this allows you to really see the ins and outs of what each of these attachments is changing. As you do this, while you're sort of changing or adding attachments, it will, obviously change these stats, and you can kind of compare what it's like with certain attachments to different attachments and see which one suits your playstyle the best. Often with games that have typical sort of creator class systems like this, they can be very vague in terms of telling you what they do, but this is a full-on breakdown of everything you need to know about each of these attachments, and it is absolutely worth looking into to get that edge on your opponents. Now, another even better tip to do with that exact same thing though, is that if you are new to the channel, you should absolutely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, because I will be doing so many loadout guides and full weapon breakdowns, going through every single stat you could possibly know about every weapon in the game, going through the best loadouts and all that sort of thing. And so if you guys are looking for that type of content, then you definitely don't want to miss out. So like I said, be sure to hit that subscribe button for plenty more XDefiant content. Now, another tip, which is something that I actually found out in the most recent playtest back in April. I was kind of struggling. Obviously, that game had a few issues with the netcode, and there were rumors, I don't know if this is confirmed, but there were rumors that there was actually skill-based matchmaking in that playtest, simply because of the fact that we were all, we started at level 1, and that welcome playlist that they've talked about, apparently, or at least there are rumors that that was implemented. So I was definitely not playing as well as I had in the previous 2 playtests, and I did find myself struggling in a few games here and there. What I did was I decided to completely slow down. I'm often, playing games like this, these sort of arena shooters, I'm the type of player that will just sprint around trying to find people and try and get as many kills as I can. That's the way that I enjoy to play. But honestly, sometimes it is worth just slowing down, not necessarily camping. You'll never see me promoting genuine camping on this channel, because that's not something that I enjoy, but just slowing down and sort of like patrolling areas rather than being the aggressor and, sprinting into areas trying to get kills. That is a really good tip that I think not a lot of people are actually going to implement into their gameplay, because in any game like this, like I said for myself, we all just like to run around and just try and get as many kills as we can. So during this launch period, if you do find yourself struggling to play well and you're not too sure what's going on, honestly, the number one tip I have is just to slow down. You don't have to be sprinting around everywhere. You should just try and find the sort of high traffic areas of the map and get towards those areas, and then just really slow down, let the enemies come to you. And I honestly think that will help your gameplay a hell of a lot. Now, the next tip is to do with your minimap, and this is especially if you're coming from recent Call of Duties, because there's obviously no red dots in the more recent CODs. Even if you have no silencer in those recent Call of Duties, your red dot will not show up on the map. And so I think a lot of us have been almost conditioned to just think, well, what's the point in looking at the minimap then? But in this game, that is something you definitely don't want to be neglecting, because in this game, when you shoot, you will appear on the minimap, and obviously that goes for enemies too. So you should absolutely be constantly keeping your eye on the minimap. You should be doing that in any shooter that you play. But like I said, recent Call of Duties have kind of conditioned us to not really care as much as we used to. So that's something that is worth keeping in mind. But also keep in mind that if people are using suppressors, or if you yourself are using a suppressor, that will stop you from showing up on the minimap. Now, another tip that I've got that I guess is a little bit more basic is to do with the factions in this game. And this is simply that you should give each faction a proper go. You don't just want to use, the first faction that you think looks cool and maybe you like their playstyle, so you kind of just stick with them and use them forever. You should definitely play as each faction for at least a good couple of hours over the first month or so, and really nail down which faction you actually like the most, not just jumping on the one that you think will suit you the most and then assuming that that is the case. Oftentimes with games like this where it has that sort of hero shooter element to it, even myself, I do tend to just kind of pick the one that sounds like it suits me the best, and then I just kind of stick with that if it is fun. But having played a lot of the different factions in the most recent playtest, I found that I actually completely switched what I thought I wanted to sort of main once the game actually launches. So give all of the factions a proper chance. Also keep in mind there may be balancing updates and stuff that have happened either since the previous playtest or even, a couple of weeks after launch. They may massively buff or nerf certain factions. So it is definitely worth giving them all a go so that you're not too reliant on any given faction. Now, lastly, and this is also a tip from the previous beta, so again, keep in mind this may change by the time the game has actually launched or even just not too long after launch. But one thing that I found in that previous beta in April is that the SMGs, and specifically the MP7, seem to be a little bit dominant, to be honest. They definitely seem to be the meta, which I feel like that was not the case back in the previous playtest. I feel like assault rifles were definitely dominant back in June last year, but honestly, the SMGs were absolutely tearing it up when it came to the playtest in April. Like I said, they may change that before launch, so just take that with a grain of salt. It is not confirmed that the SMGs will be dominant, but it's something to keep an eye on early on in the game. If they haven't changed anything from that beta in terms of the balancing, well, I dare say the SMGs are going to be dominant, and that could give you guys some very solid games early on where maybe everyone else is going to be using ARs and stuff, and you can run around and dominate with an SMG. But that is it for some of the best tips you guys should know before the game launches. Like I said, we are only a few days away now, and I cannot wait for the game to launch. I'm going to be streaming on launch day, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you are interested in tuning into a stream. And like I said, there is plenty more content on the way, plenty of guides and stuff like that. I'll be breaking down any news that we get, and realistically, this will be a one-stop shop for everything you need when it comes to XDefiant content. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you all out there in the arena.